Hi, I'm Jonathan with Farmer's Friend, and we are in Waitsfield, Vermont at Von Trapp Flowers. And with me, I have Emily von Trapp. We're excited to be giving you a tour of this operation. And Emily, you want to get us started with just a brief history of the farm?
Sure. So this farm was originally built up as a retail nursery by my parents, Toby and Sally von Trapp, back in the early 80s. And I grew up here on the property, surrounded by flowers, and got really interested in cut flowers. We had a couple acres on the backside of the property where we grew and harvested perennial and annual cut flowers, and it kind of became a natural thing for me to do. And I started selling bouquets to our local market when I was 12, and then here we are decades later. And at this point, my parents have retired from having a retail nursery open to the public, and I've kind of taken over much of the space, much of the facility to grow the flowers that I grow year-round here in Waitsfield. And what we'll see today is my winter and spring crop of winter-grown tulips.
Well, it's beautiful, and we're gonna go ahead and get started with this beautiful greenhouse behind us. So with the tour, we're gonna try to follow the process that you guys go through from the initial planting of the bulbs all the way through to harvest, but I think we should give people a teaser of this beautiful greenhouse. And so just tell us briefly like what this greenhouse is used for, and yeah, the whole process that you follow right here.
All right. Yeah, so this is our main grow house. So this is the house where everything comes into bloom and we're harvesting. We've really let it blow open to give you guys some eye candy today. Normally everything's harvested at an earlier stage, but we wanted to show you the potential of what this house is like in full bloom.
It's so beautiful.
And so we're growing on in this space. This is where we're harvesting. We do 200,000 bulbs in a season. So you can see these are some singles. This is called Mango Charm, Sunrise Dynasty. We've got a fringe tulip here, which we grow lots of fringe, lots of double peony style tulips. And we really try to focus on tulips that do well in a forcing environment. So we're growing them early in the season. Right now it's March. Our first tulips start blooming for us end of December. So we have to look for specific varieties that can handle that early season forcing and being in a greenhouse setting with, you know, higher humidity and the climate factors that we have to take into account here in Vermont.
Yeah, very cool. How many different varieties do you grow?
We're doing 100 right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of varieties. So 200,000 bulbs, 100 different varieties, and you're doing all of that in a span of 5 months, 5 to 6 months?
Yeah, it's 5 to 6 months depending on what Mother Nature throws at us. The end of the season is a little harder to control. If we get a really warm spring, our season's abbreviated, and if it can stay cooler, we can stretch it out a little longer.
Yeah. So we're here in the middle, or 1st of March, and it's quite warm. Is this warm, you know, high 40, 50 degree weather gonna mess up the production?
It's making me dance a little faster than I'm used to. So, you know, part of what makes winter growing so nice is you have a little more control. And when we get these blips of global weirding, or, you know, where we get these climate changes or weather upticks 50 degrees for 10 days, it means it's harder for me to hold back my crop. And so successions start to bump into each other. And so we're moving stuff outside that we normally wouldn't move outside until later in April, because while we have those warmer 50-degree days, we're getting the nice like 30, 28-degree nights. And so that will help to hold them back a little bit. And when we get out to that section, you'll see we're also using shade cloth to help keep things cooler there.
Very neat. Well, it's really cool to see them in this bulbing, you know, or flowering stage. But let's kind of rewind to the very beginning of the process and see how, you know, the whole process from start to finish.
Sounds good. So when my parents first started their business, this was just all open pasture and meadow for the dairy farm. And the only thing that was here was this really big rock. Wow. So as you can see, over the last 45 years, they've really built up a lot here.
Yeah, that's amazing. So even all of these trees as well?
The tree line was here, but these apple trees they planted, and this was the first structure that my dad built, and designed and built, and it's really been all the components of it work really well for tulip growing because we have a cold root cellar and we have a cool garage and the potting space as well as the growing space with passive solar. So it really gives us everything we need all in that one space.
Yeah, that's cool. So the first part of the process is putting the bulbs into the growing crates with the soil medium that you use.
Yeah, and yeah, when we source our bulbs from Holland and our first bulbs arrive in September, and then our latest bulbs are usually getting here mid-November, and sometimes a little bit later.
Okay, very cool.
So yeah, our bulbs arrive in the fall, and what we do here on our farm is we soil plant them, and we're planting into 7-inch bulb crates. You can see these come in an 8-inch. We like 7-inch because it just helps us space-wise to pack a little more into cold storage. Mm-hmm. These are bulbs that we've had here on the farm since November, and we've kept them in cold holding, so they're happy. They're not showing that they're diseased at all. They're starting to sprout a little bit, so at this point we're gonna plant them up and get them back into cold storage so they can set on some good roots. That's one of the things that we really need to have a good crop is really healthy root growth. Mm-hmm. So when we get them, we plant them into our crates, and I'm using a planting medium that's some homegrown compost that we grow here on the farm. Everything just kind of gets recycled. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna pop those in like eggs in a carton. Yeah, and so this is the process, and we get a bunch of people who come and help plant. It's kind of like a collaborative planting party, and that makes the process go a lot quicker. Planting up 200,000 bulbs we end up using a little over 3,000 bulb crates, so it's a big process. Yeah. These get planted up. We then cover with a sterile mix that we have, and that would get topped off, and then throughout the entire tulip growing process, hydration is really, really key. So we make sure to water these in as well as we can, really hydrate that sponge, that planting medium, and then we put them into cold storage. So that's the next part of the process. So I'll take you to go see our long-term cold storage. Okay, cool. So this over here to my left is something that I call my snow bunker, and it's essentially a homegrown long-term cold storage where I'm really trying to harvest the natural resource that we have here in Vermont and in the Northeast of snow and cold temperatures. We're being a little pressed with this warmth that we're having, this 50-degree days. We're a little nervous about losing our snowpack, but you can see we call this this container is Roxanne. She's all dressed up. She's got her dress on. We've got a couple layers. There's a water shedding layer of plastic on there. We have some landscape fabric for another layer. And then we've got this frost fabric on top as just another layer to keep the sun off of the plastic and the landscape fabric. We do have some insulated concrete blankets in there as well. We've got another pile here that we want to add on to it. And so essentially the snow is my insulator here. And when we get really cold nights, we're able to cold bank those temperatures and really cool down the space and slowly freeze it actually so that we can hold these crates off as long as possible.
Just so everybody understands, this is like a shipping container with snow that's piled up on the sides, right? Just to keep it cool. And then in nights that go below freezing, you have a way to circulate air through there to bring in all that cold air, right?
Exactly, yeah. So the snow is the insulator, and then at night when it's cold, single digits, we open the doors and we have a really big greenhouse fan, and so we're pulling in all the cold air. Okay. And then we're essentially cold banking. We then close it up. We've got some thick insulation in the front where the doors are, and we're able to maintain that 28 degrees and keep everything kind of in what we refer to as a suspended animation, so that we can control, them not growing and taking off, and we can pull them out as we need them to add to our growing successions.
Cool. That's really cool. So if you get another big snow, you're going to bank some more snow up on the sides to keep it going a little bit longer. Well, let's look inside.
All right. Yeah, so inside here we have all of our planted up crates, and they've rooted out, and then we've got them stacked in here for long-term cold holding. And how I was explaining, we do our cold banking. We're bringing in that really nice cold air. So these actually freeze down. If you touch that, you can feel that that's
solid.
frozen.
Yeah.
That's not something we can do if the bulbs are just planted. They really need to have established roots and be really well hydrated before we can do that slow cool down into this suspended animation. But we have about 30,000 bulbs kind of stockpiled in here for the latest part of our season. This gives us that real season extension. So this is the stuff we'll have blooming in May for Mother's Day and maybe even beyond.
Wow, that's really neat. In a few months, you'll be able to just bring out, a few dozen crates at a time and start, or however many you bring out at a time. But essentially, you wouldn't bring all of these out at once, would you? You'd be kind of phasing them out into the production.
Yeah, and the way that our successions go, we're typically bringing out 100 to 150 crates every week into our staging house, and then shifting from our staging house into our grow space.
Yeah. So then they just thaw out and start growing.
Exactly.
That is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can show you. You can see the roots are pretty happy here in some of these crates, and that's a huge piece of healthy tulips, is making sure that they have really good root growth going on. Healthy roots end up creating healthy flowers.
So they're just in complete hibernation at this point. They're not growing at all.
No, I mean, that cold and that, how they're really frozen in here. As soon as it starts to warm up, we get to a point where that outside temperature, we lose our snowpack. It starts getting a little warmer in here. As soon as that happens, that it breaks 30 degrees in this space, they will start growing and they will be eager. So we have to keep a serious eye on here. If the crates below start growing into the crates above, something happens that we've coined the term tulip Velcro, because it's like impossible to separate them. Together. So yeah, there's a lot of
risk damaging them.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of monitoring that we have to do, so we're constantly checking our spaces, and a lot of movement, moving these crates around.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So we're gonna head over to the next progression, or the next point in the progression, where we'll see the tulips when they have had a chance to start putting on some tip growth, and they're kind of in their first growing phase.
Okay.
And what's cool is that phase here is, we're going to show one of your tunnels.
Oh, neat. Yeah.
Yeah. So in this tunnel, which is one of your Gothic pros, we have what looks like a real patchwork quilt of tulips that are in their first growing phase. They've sprouted. And we have, it's about 230 crates in here. And part of the reason we have them outside is because the temperatures have gotten warmer. We want to really slow them down a little bit. It's getting down to about 28, 30, 32 at night. So that helps us to really slow this down. And we've got the shade cloth to, if we've got sunny days, to help maintain a cooler environment in here. So these guys are starting their journey towards blooming, and as we need them, we will move them in our mini truck. Usually I think we can get 9 in the back of the truck, and we'll move them up to the staging house, which we'll visit as the next part of the tour. But yeah, this is another space that we're using in that progression.
Were these crates in the snow bunker like a few weeks ago?
No, these actually weren't in the snow bunker. We have other cold holding that's now been emptied out. So we have a garage space and a root cellar. And so that's where these, started their cooling and their rooting, and then they were brought out here.
Yeah. So if you were to bring crates out of the snow bunker, like how long would it take for them to look like this?
It would take probably about a week with the temperatures that we have right now.
So they start growing pretty quickly.
They sure
and then
do.
if you move these over to the next step of the process, like how quickly would you get these to flower?
So it depends on temperatures and sunshine, but typically that amount of time from here to bloom is anywhere from 3 weeks to a little longer, depending.
So pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Yeah, if you can maintain stable temperatures, you can get things blooming in 21 to 27 days. So the next space I want to show you is the staging house, so where these get moved to next. And we'll see them putting on a little more growth, and we'll go from there. All right, so this is our staging house. We've been referring to it as Guam recently because we've been having such humidity issues in here. You walk in here and you feel like you're in that kind of climate. But I was showing you down in the tunnel we got from you guys, how they've put on some growth. This stuff here was moved from that space yesterday, whereas this stuff over here has been in this house for a week. So you can see
so that's
the amount of growth that happens in 1 week's time.
Do you have any supplemental heat in this tunnel?
So this tunnel does have supplemental heat in the back side of the house. We have a furnace that's, we have propane and forced air, but this front side of the house, we're trying to keep as a colder zone. It just gives us a little more control with our successions. So as we walk to the back of the house, I'll show you the house is draped with this sheet of plastic, and that helps us to keep the warmer air from the furnace back here, and then the front half of the house is cooler. There's a heat tube that runs along the wall underneath there. And that's actually why, I don't know if you can see, these tulips only go to a certain point there. Because that air is below and it's blowing out hot air, we want to keep our tulips cool. They're referred to often as cool flowers, so we don't get really close to that heat source.
So the concept is essentially each phase in the process just gets a little bit incrementally warmer than the last.
Exactly.
And you can control the process.
Yep.
That's really neat.
Yeah. In this portion of the staging house, things either completely fully develop and go to bloom and we harvest here, or we'll take like this section off this table as we empty out that main growing house that we started in, and we'll fill in any empty space. You know, we're always trying to move things about and have the space full everywhere, so that we have this nice wave of flowers consistently. And there's so much moving and carrying around of crates. We call it tulip Tetris here because it's just, we're literally, you know, moving, sliding, moving, replacing. But yeah, so.
How much do these crates weigh when they're full? And
they're easily 60 to 65 pounds when they're well watered.
So you guys are getting a lot of exercise.
We are. We call it tulip CrossFit. We stay very, very fit moving all these crates around.
That's great.
Yeah. So next I'd love to show you where our display garden is, which is a garden that I think you guys probably saw on our Instagram. It's really, really beautiful for June, July, August, and into September. And it's a garden my dad started building in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it really highlights a lot of the plants that they used to sell in their retail nursery, and shows the combination of plantings. And we now open the garden up for visitors to come and see during open garden days in the months of July, August, and September.
I know I've seen the shots. We'll have to insert some B-roll of that. But is all of this perennials?
It's primarily perennials. We do have what we refer to as our pet plants, so a large agapanthus crop and some dahlias in pots that he will scatter around the garden to just kind of put on a little bigger of a show in and amongst the perennials. And so he built this. This half got built first, and I helped him actually build the arbor there back in '97. And it really starts to come into peak about mid-July. The second half of the garden was built in the early 2000s, and there was a lot of work that went into prepping the space. He did several years of cover crop, and then mounded the beds and did all the plantings. And it really showcases, you know, a lot of the flowers that they grew here. It showcases some natural native plants. And yeah, it's just a really magical place in high summer. It's so beautiful,
especially with the mountains in the background. And it's amazing.
So I'd love to now take you into my dad's anemone house. You know, I mentioned my parents ran a nursery business here for 42 years. They've now retired, but my dad is still keeping himself busy, and he grows this amazing anemone crop from seed, and he's hybridizing the plants. So he's looking for plant vigor and flower shape and size and petal formation and stem length to try to create a really amazing crop. So we're gonna meet him and see his little wonderland here. This is Toby von Trapp, my father.
How do you do?
Nice to meet you. This is a beautiful greenhouse. Looks like you're having fun here.
I am. Yeah, this is my culmination of my life's work, being able to grow these. I was introduced to them about 46 years ago, and had a brief period where I grew them back in the early 90s, and then stopped growing them for quite a while and started maybe 8 or 9 years ago.
They're beautiful. So what is it about these flowers that really has captured your attention?
Well, just their physical appearance, but also the fact that it's a crop that can be grown during the winter months that doesn't require a huge amount of fuel inputs, and it prefers the cool climate. So not having much in the way of options of what to grow during the winter months. Tulips being one thing that is an option that the road that Emily's taken. I decided to do this because it's labor intensive, but it's not physically as demanding as hoisting crates around. The heaviest thing I lift is this. So it really helps from a sustainability of my physical being.
It's really cool. It's an inspiration and an awesome legacy. So
Thank you.
It was nice meeting you.
You too.
Now that we've seen this space, let's head back to where we started this morning in the main grow house. That's where we'll be harvesting tulips, and we'll show you kind of the end of the process, which is when we take the flowers and we process them and get them ready to go out to markets and out into the community.
That's great.
So up here we have the final phase of the tulip process. We've harvested all the tulips this morning, and then we're packaging them up into bouquets. These flowers will go out to our markets and then also to CSA members. So
and you're selling mostly wholesale, you said?
Yeah, primarily wholesale to like independent grocery stores and co-ops and a couple boutique shops. And then we also have a 235 member CSA, so 7 sites throughout central Vermont, and then 1 pickup here at the farm, which is great because people can come and see what we're all about.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, and so when they come, they can, they get a choice of what they're getting, all of our different varieties. It's always hard for them to choose. But yeah.
Do you mix the varieties in your bouquets, or is it mostly just one variety per?
Oftentimes we'll do a mix, but it just really depends on how much time we have and how much we're harvesting and processing. To do a mixed bouquet, it's a little more time consuming. So when we've got a really bulky harvest, we just try to go with straight varieties.
How many days a week are you harvesting?
We typically do a big harvest Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then we also will come in some Fridays, and then I'll usually have to check in on the weekend too.
Wow. That's a lot of work for the 6 months that you're doing the marketing of these.
Yeah, we're definitely busy.
Very cool.
During tulip season.
Well, it's been so neat seeing the operation from the very first steps of planting the bulbs all the way through to the packing for sale. So thanks for giving us the tour. If people want to follow you and follow your work, where can they do that?
So we're on Instagram, and it's Von Trapp Flowers is our handle there. We also have a website, vontrappflowers.shop. So that's where you can find us.
And can you talk about the tulip workshop a little bit?
Yeah.
In case people are interested in that.
Yeah, so I started the tulip workshop back in 2018, and my business partner, Linda Diarco of Little Farmhouse Flowers, and I have built up the workshop, and we've taught flower farmers all around the world our methodology of bringing flowers into bloom in January, focusing on tulips. And so if people are interested in learning more about that, we are on Instagram at The Tulip Workshop or thetulipworkshop.com.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's really neat that you've been able to not only develop a system for growing tulips in the wintertime for a long season, but also helping educate others. So bringing more beauty to the world. So that's cool. Well, thank you so much for the tour. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure people are going to enjoy this.